talk to us about, the real world consequences of dying without a plan. What does that look like?
When grief and greed collide, man, is that messy.
Welcome to the Vision Creator Podcast, from corporate to creator, with your hosts, Pamela Martino and Debbie Williams.
We have the esteemed attorney Candice Rockel joining us today, and we're going to talk about all things estate planning. Candice is an accomplished attorney, certified success coach, Kingdom CEO founder, and author. Welcome to the show, Candice.
Welcome, Candice.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you amazing ladies.
Oh, thank you so much. We're excited to have you here. There's so much to unpack. So we're going to surround our conversation today around 5 pillars. We're going to demystify what estate planning is or is not, the uncomfortable truth around estate planning, the must-have documents, kingdom stewardship and entrepreneur, and we're going to start with some practical steps for people to start today with their estate planning. So let's jump right into it. There's a lot to unpack. And so we don't want to, we want to just get to it so we can give our audience the one, two, threes of everything we're going to talk about today. And I know you have a lot to share with us. So Debbie, you want to kick us off?
Yep. So we'll talk about the first pillar. What exactly is estate planning? What it is and what it's not. So Candice, could you give us some idea of what that is?
Yeah, so estate planning is generally speaking, it is planning your estate. So in the event that something happens to you, whether you're incapacitated or deceased, what happens to your stuff, your kids, your business, everything, your health, who manages your health if you can't do it yourself? That, in a nutshell, is all estate planning is. It's just planning for, the hard things that
Yeah.
that could come.
So it isn't just about death, then, is what you're saying. It's really
No,
about,
it's
yeah.
it's not just about death. It's also about incapacity, but it's also planning for I mean, none of us are getting out of this alive, right? So
Yeah.
in the event that something
Literally.
happens, in the event that something happens and we pass away, what happens then? But also if you're living, but you can't manage your own matters, your health, your finances, your children, those kinds of things, who's going to help you?
Yeah, yeah. So what is one of the biggest myths that's keeping professional women stuck from doing their estate planning? What would you?
The biggest one I see every time is it's almost a fear that if I start talking about it, I'm going to invite bad things into my life,
Wow.
right? It's a fear of what if this happens to me. There's also, the other things are, well, I don't have enough money to worry about it. I don't have children, so I don't need to deal with it.
Oh, wow.
Everything will go to my spouse anyway, so I'm not just not gonna think about it. Those are the big ones, but the biggest one is fear. And
Wow.
that's understandable, but that is,
Mhm.
as professional women, we know that fear can't keep us stuck. We have to deal with the scary things. So yeah, the fear of the unknown, the fear of the bad stuff, that's the
Mm.
biggest one.
So for faith-grounded women, how are we uniquely positioned to lead our families in something like estate planning? What would you say?
So I I'm going to be brutally honest with this answer, and I say it with love and compassion. And my answer from a faith perspective is get
Mhm.
over yourself. God
Yeah.
has entrusted you with a business, or God has entrusted you
Mm.
with humans who rely on you and who love you. And many times, especially Christian women in the professional field, we are the glue. We
Yeah.
make sure everything continues running, and stuff gets done. The kids get to soccer practice. The piano lessons are paid for. All of that stuff is important, but you sort of have to get over the thought that if I think about this and I plan for this, it's going to invite bad stuff into my life, or it'll just work out. Because no, it's not going to just work out.
Yeah.
God has given you assets and humans to steward, and you have to steward them well. So it's your
Amen.
responsibility to get this done for your family.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. All
Yeah.
right. Pillar
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
That
That's
Dated with
was
love.
good. That was good. That's good.
Yeah,
It's a love letter, right? Estate planning
that's
is a
right.
love letter to your family, right?
That's right. Yep, that's right. Yep, it's saying I loved you enough to plan for my for me being gone.
And it is. It's hard. It's hard conversations, and that's going to move us into our next pillar, which is the uncomfortable truth. And it is. Those are really uncomfortable conversations. And Candace, you were gracious to help me with my estate planning, and so mine originally. I don't know if I would have been as prompt to do it had I not lost my father. And so untimely, my father passed away. He was 58 years old. He wasn't planning to die. And so we had some things that came out of that because he died so young that there were just some things that weren't in place.
Right,
And
right.
it was a real uncomfortable truth, to
Mhm.
learn, those things and having to work through someone's estate. And especially
Yeah.
when there's a stepmom or a stepdad involved. And that's what our situation
Yep.
led to. And so that, caused me and my husband to say, you know what, we cannot do that to our family. And at that
Right.
time we had smaller children, but we
Yep.
knew it was something we needed to have in place. And so,
Yep.
we just completed ours this year, but we had it was hard conversations. It took us 2 years to get through it because I don't think we anticipated
How
how
difficult.
hard of a conversation, I mean, the really challenging conversations we needed to have, right? And so,
Yeah.
anyway, so let's go into the uncomfortable truths and talk to us about, the real world consequences of dying without a plan. What does that look
So,
like?
so the uncomfortable truth is that, as I stated, nobody gets out of this alive. Every single one of us is going to pass from this earth at some point.
Yeah.
It's not something that's has anything to do with religion, race, finances, economic status, education status. None of it matters. All of us will pass away at some point. And the second part of that is that if you die without having done anything, you're leaving behind chaos, confusion, fear, regret, all of those things. You're not there to deal with it, but your family's going to deal with it. So here's what I see most often when people do nothing is
Mm,
that the state decides, right? There's a thing called intestate succession. And what that means is that it's a law that says if you die without a will or a trust, the state's going to tell you who gets what, right?
mm,
So if you wanted to leave money to your church, or if you wanted your grandchildren to have a college fund, or if you have minor children and you wanted to make sure they were provided to into adulthood or provided for into adulthood, you can't do any of that.
mm,
That's all of those options are off the table after you're gone. The other part of that is that when grief and greed collide,
mm,
man, is that messy. And it might not even be that somebody is greedy, wanting more of what's not entitled to them. It may just be that their own grief and their own fears are rearing their ugly heads within them, and then conflict ensues. It does not matter who you are or what you're doing. Conflict is going to come about when there's grief and money involved. So that's just a whole thing that you can avoid by making sure that you say this is what happens.
yeah.
The third part of this uncomfortable truth, and Pamela, I tell this story a lot just because, not because I want to put the fear into people, but because I want people to understand what happens when you do nothing. The reason I started estate planning in the first place was when I was a baby lawyer and I was litigating. One of the things I did was I worked as a guardian ad litem, and I was appointed by the court to represent a 2-year-old. And
Mm,
this young man had been left with a babysitter. His parents went out on date night, killed in an auto accident,
oh
and
my
he was
God.
then put into foster care because none of his family was local. And the parents hadn't done anything to prepare for what happens to my kid
Oh
if
my God.
something happens to me. So
Wow.
this tiny baby lost his parents, his home, everything he knew, and then he was also put into foster care for several weeks while the court, who didn't know and love this child, decided what was going to happen to him.
Okay.
So, if nothing else, make sure your children are provided for in that way.
Wow. That
Wow.
that's devastating. Like
It
that's like the
is.
worst case scenario, right? Because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think you have time. You
More than 20 years later, I'm still talking about that story
Oh
because it
my
was
God.
so hard. It was really hard.
Oh my
wow.
God. I hope it worked out with the kid. Did he ultimately find a
He He ultimately went with his grandparents out of state, but it took about 3 weeks
Oh my
to get
God.
it done.
He had to
Yeah.
be
Wow.
So,
terrified. He had to be
oh, it was so
terrified.
sad. It was so
Oh my
sad.
goodness.
I felt
Yeah.
so bad for this child, but yeah.
So let me ask you, so intestate laws and then probate. I know what probate is because we had to go through that with my dad. But
Right.
intestate laws, like, do they coexist or are they
Yeah.
singular?
Yeah. So in the probate process, all of your assets are being divvied up among the people who should receive them after your death. And intestate succession comes in when the deceased person has not created a will or a trust or both. And it says, this is who's going to get your stuff. If you have a will, you still have to go through probate to manage the transfer from yourself to the heir. It's just that your will determines that rather than the state law. When you have a trust, all of those assets are pulled out of the probate estate. So they don't have to go to probate in order to be transferred to your next of kin. So that's a great vehicle. That trust provision is a fantastic vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we started out with the will and realized, I guess, just living and hearing and conversation that that was not enough. Right.
Yes.
And then that's when we
Yeah,
moved into the estate planning.
trust.
Yes, the trust.
Into the trust. Yeah, you were doing estate planning when we were doing the will, but the trust was just another layer of protection. And the reason we do that for many people, and there's a lot of reasons, but in my business, the reason we do it the most often is because you have children. Now, none of my children are under 18, so they theoretically could inherit outright, but I don't want them to. I have an 18-year-old son who's I love more than life, but he's a bonehead. If he received a whole bunch of money, he wouldn't know what to do with himself. So until he's a good bit older, he gets access to my assets, but his grandfather or his uncle has to approve it.
Yeah.
So a grown up has to help him, still guide him with his
Wow.
financial decisions, right? So
No, that's very smart because we did the same. We did the same
yeah,
because even though your
yeah,
kids are labeled as adults,
yeah.
they've never been an adult. So they don't necessarily know
Mhm.
how to handle all the business and affairs. And,
And
if
that's
they get something prematurely, they could ruin them.
100%. And that's another part of estate planning that I counsel parents on. When your child turns 18, they're still mama's baby, but they are
Yes.
legit adults from the state standpoint. So on my children's 18th birthdays, every one of them are presented with their own estate plan that says, if you need help,
Hmm.
mommy can help you
Oh,
with
that's
legal
good.
and medical, because otherwise the state wouldn't necessarily let them.
I just heard something. I don't know if I heard on the news last week or the week before that children should have their own estate planning plan. And you don't
Yep.
think about that, but
Right.
it is
Well,
unnecessary to have.
and they might not need anything related to assets, but they
Yeah.
definitely need their powers of attorney. They need to have mom and dad or, a trusted adult be able to help them with healthcare decisions and
Right.
financial decisions if needed. Because they're adults, but they're still, pretty young, not fully formed frontal cortex. They
That's
still
right.
need
Yeah.
help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we all have a few boneheads in our family that we need to care for.
and,
I have several.
and God willing, they'll outgrow it. But
Yes, they
woo!
will. And they're way older than 18 years old. So trust me, I know. I
And the
feel the pain.
important thing about that too, I'm sorry to belabor this, but because we all have children in that segment of life. And then
Yeah.
what really was triggering for me on that thought when I saw that on the news or wherever I heard that information is because they're 18 and they're not children, that HIPAA. So you're
Yep.
trying to help make, medical decisions for your children, and the doctor
Yep.
does not have to talk to you.
That's
That
correct.
scared me. That was like, oh my God,
That
that could,
is,
yeah,
yeah, that's a whole thing. But yeah,
that
it's
is a whole
it's
thing.
accurate. And it's getting tighter and tighter as, the more litigious our society gets, those safeguards get tighter. So,
One of the other things I want to talk about in this segment as well is after you have your trust established, one of the things you advised us to do was put our assets, make our the beneficiary our trust. So if something
yep,
happens, everything goes into the trust, and then things can be disseminated out from the trust, from versus
immediately.
trying to go to these different institutions or whatever and working with the different
Yep.
institutions. Can you explain some of that?
Absolutely. So how I explain this to people is when we create a trust, we're building a box. And there's nothing in the box unless you put stuff into the box. So in order to put your assets into the box, well, the trust document on its face will put all of your non-titled assets in there already. So, cash on hand, jewelry, clothing, furniture, all of that is automatically owned by the trust because there's no title. Whenever there's a title that has to transfer, you have to proactively transfer that title to the trust. So typically that's a home, right? We title the home, we deed the home to the trust. And then the financial assets, bank accounts, money markets, mutual funds, life insurance, 401k, all of those things have the ability to put a payable on death clause or a beneficiary clause on it so that you still own it individually as a human while you're living. But then the second you pass away, the trust owns it and your family can use that money to pay for final expenses, mortgage, if the kids need counseling. All of those assets are immediately available rather than waiting for them to go through probate for a year or whatever.
Yeah. And if someone forgets to pull their home into the trust, does that one property, does that have to go through probate or does it
It has to
automatically?
go through probate. Yep.
Jeez, wow.
Nothing
Okay.
is nothing is automatic. You have to title it to the trust, otherwise the trust does not govern anything. So,
Okay. And that's like a quick claim deed. That's how,
correct.
right.
Yep.
So we use a lot of big terms. So is there a way
Yep.
we can distill it down to like plain English? Like, okay,
Yep.
what is a will? In plain language, what
Yeah.
is a trust and power attorney and healthcare directive?
Yep. Absolutely. So the will is essentially who gets what. When I die, this person gets this, that, and the other thing. When we have a trust with it, we just say the trust gets everything, period. You can do just a will, but then everything has to go through probate in order to transfer to the next person. The trust, as we just mentioned, that's the box where everything is in the box or goes into the box immediately upon death without having to go through probate. And then that's the vehicle. It's really it's just a legal, it's
Mm-hmm.
just a little pretend box.
Hmm.
Um, it,
Gotcha.
it it's not a bank account. It's not anything like that. You can get a bank account in the name of the trust, but it's just that little box where everything is in it. And the
Mm-hmm.
trust says who gets what, but also when and under what circumstances and how. So, and all of my trusts will say if one of my heirs has a substance problem, don't give them their money, so you can protect them from themselves. The power of attorney, there's a power of attorney for legal matters and financial matters that gives the person that you name the ability to manage your money, manage your apartment rent or lease, things like that, legal and financial. And then there's the healthcare documents. The
Mm-hmm.
healthcare documents, in my opinion, are the most important things for if you're living but incapacitated. There's two of them. One of them is the healthcare power of attorney, and the other one is the advanced directive. And they sort of work together. The healthcare power of attorney names a human, and preferably somebody who knows and loves you, to make your healthcare decisions
Mm-hmm.
for you. In the event that you can't do it yourself. If you can do it yourself, doesn't apply. And then the advanced directive goes one step further and it says, okay, if I am incapacitated from any of one of three scenarios, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be back to my, I'm never going to be not incapacitated, then I would like my end of life healthcare to be handled this way.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a DNR because they definitely do R. It's not a do not resuscitate.
Yeah.
It kicks in when they've done everything they can do and they
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, we're out of options. And then it steps in so your family doesn't have to and says, okay, she's already decided this is how she wants end of life medical care to be handled. Just take some of
Wow.
that burden off of your human.
So just a clarifying question. So when you talked about if you just have a will and it goes to probate, what's the downside of it going to probate? Is it that it's just the delay? Because it sounds like the assets are still going to get transferred according to what's in a will. But what's the down? What are you losing out by having it go straight to probate?
For some people, that's completely reasonable. Um, for most people, they don't want their their heirs, their children, their parents, whoever, to have to deal with that stuff, right?
Oh,
So if you have just a will, the executor has to manage gathering everything up, running it through probate, and it's very, very, very paperwork intensive and time
mm,
intensive. And then there's a significant delay before your family receives any of that. The other thing is that there are much fewer options for asset protection after you pass away when it goes through a will and not a trust. I have a trust for my children just so that they don't get immediate access to their funds without the oversight of a grown up.
Mhm.
oh, okay. So explain that part again about the funds transfer. I wasn't clear on that piece. Could you say that part again?
When it goes through probate,
Hmm.
it's immediate access to those funds
Oh,
after
gotcha.
probate.
Okay. Okay.
So probate typically takes 8 to 12 months
Oh, wow.
approximately to get
Oh my.
through.
Oh, wow.
So it's the delay in the court being able to work through all of your documents.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's very interesting. So with that said, Pamela, so if anybody, if comment below if you've started your estate plan, no judgment, just honesty, because we'll be reading each comment.
No shame, no blame, no judgment. You
That's
you
right.
can cry, but you have to do it anyway.
That's right.
Exactly.
We'll let you cry, but we won't let you quit.
How legitimate would it be if someone just typed something out on paper and they signed it? Could that be their estate plan? Could that be their
No,
will? No. Okay.
there are very few instances where that will be accepted by the court as an estate plan. I mean, you can try it, but this is one of those scenarios where if it's wrong, you can't fix it.
Mhm.
So I recommend, even please don't use like LegalZoom or something. Don't use a do it yourself, just because if it's wrong when you need it, can't do anything about it.
Mm,
It's going to be managed incorrectly.
mm. So
Mm.
what about irrevocable versus revocable? Because there's some consequences with that as well, isn't it?
Yes, I do very, very few irrevocable trusts. Not because they don't have their place. They definitely have a place for certain categories of asset ownership and whatnot. 90% of the population doesn't need it
Mm.
because of, what they have or what they need to protect, how they need to
Yeah.
protect it, things like that. Um, Irrevocable is just like it sounds. There's a lot more restrictions on modification
Yeah.
than there would be with a revocable. With revocable, you still own everything while you're living. You can still change it as much as you want while you're living. When you pass away, then it becomes irrevocable in the sense that it's going to be administered exactly the way you've said, and it can't
Yeah.
be changed at that point. But while you're living, it's still completely changeable.
Okay, that's good. Okay,
And people
Pamela.
can make edits to it, right? And so it's not, I mean, although it is a final document, but like 5 years, if there's a change in
Mhm.
life or whatever, you can
Yep,
go and modify it and update it.
absolutely. And I usually recommend you look at it every year or 2 years just to make sure it still says what you want it to
Oh,
say,
that's good.
does what you
Okay.
want it to do.
Yeah.
If all of your backup trustees are getting older,
Mhm.
you might want to think about changing those.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move into pillar. I think we're on four now.
Yep, we're for it.
Kingdom stewardship and entrepreneurs. And so in this segment, Candice, I want us to talk about your coaching business. So you're also an attorney, you're coaching the Kingdom CEO. If you do have a business, how do you categorize your business for your estate planning? All the things that encapsulate everything you do around estate planning and in your coaching business and all the things. So
Yeah.
let's just talk about, estate planning as an act of faith and not fear, right? Whatever you
Yep.
do, work at it with all your heart as working unto the Lord, right? That was one of the quotes that I pulled from your website. And then also, most people don't avoid estate planning because they don't love their family. They avoid it because it forces us to face something no one wants to face. That was something else I pulled from your site. So
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about, okay, we're business owners. I think, not I think, I know we're all business owners. How do we estate plan when we, have, your family stuff, your home, but then you also have a business and then incorporate, like I said, the coaching piece of that as well.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. I am of the mind that when you are a Christian, your business is your ministry.
Mm,
Like it's not separate, right?
mm,
Everything you do, you're working as for the Lord, not for man. Everything. And
mm,
that includes your work. Maybe it includes your work more so than anything else that you're doing because you are impacting lives, you are meeting people, you are being the hands and feet of Jesus in your business.
amen.
So thank you.
Yeah,
Amen. Yes.
amen. Yeah. That's a testimony right there, right?
Yeah, yes. Well, and also as Christian business owners, we are called to be good stewards of what God has
Mhm.
entrusted to
Yep.
us.
That's right.
Mhm.
That includes the business, that includes the children, that includes the finances, that includes the podcast that we're sitting on. You are entrusted with something by the Lord. You need to be a good steward of that trust. The part where we get it twisted is that it doesn't end when we go home to Jesus. We
Mhm.
still need to be good stewards of what he gave to us. And the best way we can be good stewards, in my opinion, of what we have once we're gone is to make sure that it doesn't die with us.
Mm,
So you spent, 20, 30 years building a business. What happens to that business when you are gone, when you're deceased or incapacitated? Does it die with you or does it continue on? What happens to the assets and the income from that business when you are deceased or incapacitated? Those are real questions that need to be answered when you're built, specifically when you're building a business. Okay. The other part of it is it, it, how you're building. Okay, so I love working with entrepreneurs. I have an entrepreneurial heart myself. You know that, Pamela. You and I
yeah.
have had this conversation many, many times. But what in 25 plus years of working in business and estate planning, what I see most often, the gaps and the challenges and the breakdowns that I see most often are two things: the beginning and the end, right? So in the middle, we know how to do the craft. We know how to be real estate agents. We know how to be an attorney. We know how to be a dentist. We know how to be, a designer. We know how to do that stuff in the middle. What we don't always think enough about is what happens at the beginning and what happens at the end. And those two pieces, if they're not properly formatted, can cost you tens of thousands, if not more, of dollars and headaches that are not fixable or quantifiable. So I created the Kingdom CEO Intensive to minimize those costs, minimize those risks, and put into place the two pieces that most entrepreneurs are absolutely failing on. And
Mm,
I don't say that in a judgmental way. They're failing because you don't know what you don't know. And that's okay. If you don't know, get help with it. So the Kingdom CEO Intensive steps in and says, okay, you know what you want to do in this middle piece. Let's set up the foundational stuff here, including all of your legal and compliance and your branding and your customer avatar. All of that, we're going to set that up really, really strong. And this part is based on what I've seen entrepreneurs do really poorly. And then the other piece is we're also going to think about the end piece. What's your exit? What's your exit strategy? If you die while the business is still viable, what happens next? All of these pieces, so that this piece can be really successful and have longevity and scalability, we're going to make sure these two pieces, the front end and the back end, are solid, built on a solid foundation. And because it's Kingdom CEO, it's all built on the Jesus foundation, of course. But then the second layer of that is the beginning and the end. So
that's good.
Oh,
And
that's
so
good.
can someone have, or I guess the question, would someone incorporate their business with their personal in estate planning? Could it be one plan or should you have a separate plan?
yes, yes,
Okay.
both. Yes. So you have to figure you have to manage all of the business assets as a business asset. So that is a separate plan. The estate planning from you as a human or as a married couple or whatever the case may be, that has to include your business as well.
Hmm.
So you're going to have all the legal documents that manage your business. Um, that we're going to set up in Kingdom CEO in this first part. And then on the back end, we're also going to figure that business into your estate plan so that succession is managed. Does that make
Okay.
sense? That
Yes,
was a lot of words.
No, it makes good sense. And we're going to give everyone your contact information. We're going to include all of that in our show notes so people know how to get in contact with you. And so
Yeah,
if they want some coaching from you or create an estate plan or just whatever, questions they may have that they will be able to contact you. So we'll make sure all of that is provided.
thank
But if
you.
you want to just, because we're talking about it now, if you want to just share what your website is, please.
So I don't have the Kingdom CEO intensive on the website. And the reason for that is because I only do 3 cohorts a year. I keep it intentionally small so that I can talk to each person individually and make sure that what we're building is specific to you. So I gave you the link
Yes.
for the sign
Yes.
up for the Kingdom CEO intensive. We start another cohort in August, and we still do have a few spots left. But once you enter that cohort, you work with the same 15 people and me through the next 12 weeks. And we make sure by the end of 12 weeks that it's all ready to rock and roll.
Awesome. And I'm looking at your book cover, well, once we go through the fifth pillar, I want to come back and talk a little bit about your book, just so we can give the audience of what your book is about, because we're going to post that as well. And so people who are
Oh, I
interested in
appreciate that.
purchasing it, they'll know what it is. And the book title is called Pause on Purpose. So we're going to save that just a cliffhanger so people can stay on to the end so we can get a little bit of a summary of what that
Okay.
book is all about. But let's move on to
Okay.
our last pillar. And
Yep.
Debbie, you want to take it from here?
Yep, I'll take it from here. So Candice, I'll ask you a series of questions, right? Just
Yep.
if somebody wanted to start the day, some practical steps. So my first question is, what's the single first step a viewer can take this week without an attorney? Just what's the first thing, the single most important thing they have to do?
Well, I think the single first thing you can do is to understand what you have.
Mm,
How old are your children, and get real honest with yourself about when you think they might be ready to handle things.
mm,
Um, where are your assets located? Your attorney doesn't need to know that information, but you do, and your executor or trustee is going to know that. So my first thing is to get real serious. Spend time with Jesus if you've got a significant fear, because that
yes.
cannot hold you back.
Yeah,
You cannot let fear hold you back. Fear is not
good.
from the Lord. If you're fearful,
Amen.
you got to find a way to get past that. But I think the first step, if you can get past that fear piece,
Yeah,
is to write out what you've got, so you know.
yeah. And I agree with that. I mean, that's what took me. So it took me like 2 years to even pull together a plan because the fear, right? Like, I mean, you're spot on. I was so,
100%. Yeah.
but then, like you said, being a good steward while I'm not here, that would be devastating to leave my family so unprepared. I have many
Yeah.
assets, so it would be shame on me. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be a good steward. So that's excellent. Okay, so the next one, what to look for when hiring an estate planning attorney? What kind of questions should a person ask?
I mean, I think it's always important to understand how long they've been doing it and what their philosophy is on estate planning. Why do you do what you do?
Mm,
Because this is a very personal a personal journey, right? So you don't want to work with somebody who's diametrically opposed to the viewpoints that you have, who might talk you out of doing things that are important to you from a faith perspective, that you might otherwise do, or that this is a big one for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pay for a service that's going to fund something that I am absolutely opposed to.
mm.
So when values are aligned, I know that what I'm paying for is going to something that matters for eternity, and not, something that's funding something nefarious.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's
That's
good.
just
That's
that's
good.
just my
That's
personal opinion.
Oh, that's excellent. That's okay. So the final question, why hiring a faith-aligned attorney who understands your value matters? Why does that matter?
Faith aligned attorneys see gaps in your thinking based
Mhm.
on that faith perspective that you might not see. And I don't know if this is helpful or not, but I pray with my clients. I pray
Oh,
for my
good.
clients. And if my client shows up in tears because the fear of
Wow.
facing their mortality is so big, we'll pray before we
Oh,
start.
wow.
It's just you bring God into the conversation and everything shifts.
Yeah.
Amen. Oh, I
So
love that. I love that.
yeah.
Bring God into the conversation. Everything shifts.
Yeah. That's really
That's
good.
awesome.
That's
That's
that's why I like to work with faith aligned people, because God's in the middle of that conversation, not just on my side.
yeah. Amen. Amen. And so one of your biggest resources, for someone, a direct path would be legacylawgroupnc.com. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
If someone to get
Yep.
started. Yeah, awesome, awesome. Then you got the Kingdom CEO Intensive. So just I'm gonna ask our listeners, drop a raising hand emoji in the comments if today's conversation make you finally take action. We want to see it, right, Pamela?
Yes, absolutely. And I hope this is to, help so many people. Candace, and our platform is that's exactly what we want to do. Encourage women to take some action or whatever it might be that we're talking on real estate, investing in a business, financial, just whatever it might be. And now today we're talking about estate planning. So hopefully to encourage them to move forward on the things that they need, the necessary things that we need to do, because oftentimes we let someone else take that role. So, before we finally close out, let's talk about your book, Pause
Yeah,
on Purpose.
yes,
Let's talk
ma'am.
about it. Tell us what it's all about.
So I love writing books, and a few years ago it was impressed upon me that I needed to just be an author on the side. And God tells me what to write. I was writing a book called God-Sized Dreams, and that got put on the back burner. That is coming back this year. But the one that's almost done, ready to roll out, is called Pause on Purpose: Intentional Rest for Women. And it's very practical. It's maybe funny. It's gentle, but it's talking about the need for rest and how to implement that in easy ways, not just, you're tired, you're overworked, just take a nap. That's not practical. So it's a practical approach to receiving rest at the feet of Jesus that is the gift from God. He wants us to rest and recharge and fill up our cup.
Oh, that sounds
Mhm.
so good.
That's good.
Rest, because we oftentimes, especially being a mom and even being a mom of adult kids, you think it would be easier, but it's not.
Yeah.
No,
You worry
no.
like crazy. What are they
Mhm.
doing? Where are they at? And who are they with?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah.
end.
Bigger kids, bigger problems.
Yes. Well, we want to thank you so much, Attorney Candace, for your time and giving us your energy and the information of estate planning and all things around that. And again, I hope it goes forth and it helps the masses, women and men, whoever sees us, right? It doesn't matter that if you're a man, you still need a trust, an estate trust, and planning. So thank you again for joining us
Yes.
today.
If you want to be a community of women who are building the next chapter in faith and strategy, join us on our next. Join us by subscribing. But Candace, thank you so much for all the helpful information you've given us and all the like you said, I love what you said. Get over yourself, right? And with the grace of God, we can do all things
Amen.
with him, right? He is our strength. So I love the ministry, the testimonials, the ministry, everything you shared with us today. It was beautiful. Thank you so much.